Ethiopia. Here is a country that, as recently as 2019, was receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. Its prime minister was celebrated across the international media as a transformational leader, a visionary, a man who had ended a decades-long conflict with a neighboring state and was ushering his country into a new era of democratic openness. The international investment community was excited. The development agencies were optimistic. The narrative was irresistible. 2 years later, one of the worst civil wars of the 21st century was consuming the country's northern regions. Atrocities were being committed on a scale that the United Nations, using its characteristic euphemism, described as among the most horrific in the world. Hundreds of thousands were dead, millions were displaced. The Nobel laureate was directing a military campaign that independent investigators were documenting with the language of war crimes. What happened? Nothing happened that wasn't already visible in 2019 to anyone who looked past the Nobel narrative. Ethiopia is a federation of deeply distinct ethnic, linguistic, and regional communities held together not by genuine civic integration, but by elite bargains and historically by authoritarian force. When the force was relaxed, when the liberalization that earned the Nobel Prize loosened the mechanisms of central control, the underlying centrifugal forces didn't disappear. They accelerated because they had never been resolved. They had only been suppressed. The lesson of Ethiopia is the lesson of every federal state that has tried to manage ethnic pluralism through top-down political theater rather than genuine structural accommodation. It is the lesson of Yugoslavia. It is the lesson of the Soviet Union. It is the lesson that political scientists have been writing about since the 1990s. And yet, every generation, the international community rediscovers it with fresh shock, as though it had never happened before. Pakistan is the third country on this list, and here the collapse is unfolding in slow motion across three simultaneous axes: fiscal, military, and political legitimacy. The fiscal situation is not a crisis that can be resolved by the next IMF program. Pakistan has been in and out of IMF programs for 70 years. This is not a temporary liquidity problem. This is a structural condition in which the state cannot generate sufficient revenue to fund basic functions, because the elite that controls the state has successfully exempted itself from taxation for generations, because the military consumes a disproportionate share of public resources and is not accountable to civilian oversight, and because the agricultural sector, which employs the majority of the population, operates under feudal land arrangements that systematically impoverish the rural poor while enriching a small class of landlords who also dominate the legislature. Add to this the political crisis unleashed by the arrest of a former prime minister with a genuine